Yes, exciting. Well, thank you all for joining us today. It's, I think under normal circumstances, we were going to be doing this keynote in Palm Springs at the Field Service USA show. And I genuinely am sorry not to be there. It's always such a great time to connect with you all, our customers, our prospects, even our own teammates. I miss seeing everybody in person. So we're going to do our best today to make this as lively and as interesting as possible from the hopeful comfort of our own homes. And I want to back up a little bit, and before we dive into the present and future of field service, I want to take a little bit of a look back. My own experience in the industry started in the mid-90s when I worked for Clarify. Hopefully some of you all remember Clarify, maybe even used Clarify or worked with it. It was a very early CRM technology company focused on service. And our biggest issues at Clarify, this was back when the only type of technology out there for enterprises was client server. That on-prem was kind of the only way. And our biggest issue at Clarify centered around how do we extend the technology to the technicians in the field. And really it was only just to get them their schedule electronically. Think about it. I think we all woke up this morning and looked at our phones first thing and looked at our schedule for the day. So easy to understand what's laid out for you in your schedule. But things that are so simple now were incredibly challenging back then. And I think the advent of cloud and mobile technologies and the tech industry's ability to deliver game-changing technology really has driven an immense change in what businesses can do for their customers. I mean, just last week, I was talking with another service industry veteran, our guest, Mark Hessinger from 3D Systems, who will be on in a few minutes. And we were talking about how business requirements have evolved. And he said it used to be that all we focused on was getting the right technician to the right place at the right time. And that was a major challenge in itself. Today, I think we all know that requirement is table stakes. You absolutely have to focus on scheduling to get the right person to the right door. But I think as the world has evolved and technology has evolved and customers demand more, we can deliver more. And for companies that manufacture high value, complex assets or equipment, there are only two things that really matter, and that's number one, uptime, and number two, the internal efficiencies required to deliver and maintain that uptime. Come on, slide. And now in this unprecedented, crazy, strange, scary, there's so many adjectives to describe the time that we're in now with COVID-19, but the importance of tracking and servicing equipment has never, ever been more important or more visible. Every hospital, every municipality, every country in the world is attempting to count their ventilators and understand how many are up and in use. Many of our own med device customers are running their operations at 4x normal capacity, and other manufacturers are switching their operations from building cars to building ventilators. And these companies are really helping us fight the nasty pandemic, but think of the strain that puts on service. 4x operations means 4x the need for installs and repairs. Not only do we need to know where every ventilator is and how many are available, we need to ensure we have the capability to install and service them with much less trained staff in a way that ensures uptime, and at a time when a lot of people are simply staying at home. If you think about it, one more working ventilator could mean several more lives saved. And I mean, it really is the epitome of keeping the world not only running, but keeping the world alive. And the same is true for lab testing equipment. I mean, we're even in a phase where PPE has evolved into an asset that needs to be tracked, managed, and kept up for customers. Oh, sorry, keeping my slides up here. This need for efficient processes that drive uptime are really clear for us these days in the life sciences and medical industries, but there are many other industries that are what we call asset-centric. Organizations in these industries offer high-value equipment that is typically mission-critical for customers. Assets are usually built, assembled, and or installed at a customer's location. And the service process is rarely as simple as just showing up and replacing the unit. It usually requires a complex, multi-stage process that leverages a uniquely skilled team of field technicians or engineers. We still certainly have plenty of organizations that are what we call resource or appointment centric. For example, when my dishwasher breaks, I want the technician to show up at my doorstep as quickly as possible and fix my dishwasher. And there are certainly complexities in scheduling thousands of appliance repair technicians to get to thousands of doorsteps every single day. But for asset-centric organizations, the service delivery chain is much more complex. I'm going to take a while to walk through this slide, so stick with me here. Let's start with the asset commissioning, or getting it installed and live. With ServiceMax, once your customer has purchased an asset, the necessary people in the organization can manage all of the activities, starting with installation of the asset, setting up the IoT connectivity, training the maintenance and operational team on site, activating the warranty, and then setting up the service plans that work best for the customer. These plans represent a huge array of pricing, discounting, and service level agreement options. Once that service plan is selected, a service contract can easily be created at the point of product sale. Next comes an issue. You got it installed, but then there's a problem. The customer has an issue with an asset. He can use the portal to log a service request, which will then give him a series of relevant questions in an effort to have him resolve the problem and get that asset back into service and avoid the need for a technician to come be scheduled on site to fix the problem. We do this by leveraging AI and machine learning to perform remote triage. If the customer can't resolve the problem themselves, then a work order can be created and a technician will be dispatched. Or remote device monitoring can inform you of any anomalies that are occurring long before that asset even goes down, and a technician can be sent there in advance of an outage situation. Now we can move into the complexities of the work order creation and the dispatch. When that work order is created, entitlement is automatically verified to ensure contract coverages are applied and a service appointment is scheduled. The dispatch step assigns pending work orders to technicians, and it takes into account the customer's entitlement, the priority of the problem, the SLA commitments, even the technician expertise and the route coverage. Dispatchers can adjust those schedules in real time and convey the adjustments to the technicians in the field, track their location, and vary their assignments based on availability. And then even authorized service providers can access the relevant information via the partner portal. Now we're in the repair phase. I mean, we're only halfway through this slide and we're already seeing how complex this service delivery chain can be. With the assignment and the schedule on his mobile device, like we talked about, we all get to see our schedules on their mobile device and in our devices in an easy way. Technicians can do that too. When they get theirs within a predefined range of the customer's location, a notification is automatically generated and sent to the customer to inform them that the technician is nearby and will arrive soon. Then the technician can perform whatever work they need to do at the customer site, whether it's installing new equipment or diagnosing and repairing problems. And if they run into an issue, if they have a question, they can use Zinc, which is a real-time communication solution that gives them a hotline capability to get to an expert, get on a video call, and understand how to solve that problem in real time instead of having to dispatch another more experienced technician the following day. You could see how you could use a relatively lesser skilled technician to fix problems because you can connect them to experts in real time. And finally, with ServiceMax Mobile, the technician can access all the needed information from the field, including service history, asset repair records, digital manuals, or even online videos for that particular asset that requires service. They can also look up trunk stocks for replacement parts. They can access parts inventory of other nearby technicians. And when they get to the work order debrief, they ensure that that part usage is updated in real time or near real time if they're working offline, and capture the time that the technician spent servicing the asset. If any calibration or compliance requirements are needed prior to closing the work order, the technician will then be prompted to complete a checklist specific to that asset and the work that was performed. Also, ServiceMax can give technicians access to real-time inventory information and the ability to order parts from the field. Using a smart device for barcode scanning, technicians can transmit parts information in real time, including the parts that were used, the parts that were returned for repair, and it gives them an accurate current view of asset stocking levels and location. If you have a depot repair service strategy, ServiceMax handles the complex returns management with forward and reverse logistics, as well as the needed repair routings and operations that need to occur in the depot. And finally, when we get to the close part, after performing the work on site, the technician can generate a pro forma invoice on his mobile device, and then customers can sign off electronically, approve the work done, the parts used, and labor time spent. By the way, many of our customers in the time of COVID are changing their processes so that the technician can check a box saying, yes, the customer signed off without the customer having to touch the iPad and keep as a contactless method as possible. But this allows technicians to quickly close the work orders, input all the necessary data, including the service records, the billing information, and the dispatcher can see that the work is closed and then can route that technician to the next and nearest relevant job. We're almost done with the complexities of the asset-centric service delivery chain, but analytics are so crucial. The service performance metrics, which are configurable reports and dashboards, give you, your executives, your service staff, the ability to easily manage the service business, to see profits, losses, inventory levels, service levels, perform failure analysis, and this analysis can feed back into the product development lifecycle to build better, more repairable, and serviceable parts. I'm going to take a breath. I think we can all agree on how complex that service delivery process is for asset-centric organizations. But you can imagine the complexities of tracking all of that information. For asset-centric organizations that are focused on uptime, which is pretty much most asset-centric organizations, if not all, everything in the service delivery chain is informed by asset data. It's generated throughout the asset lifecycle from the time the asset is commissioned and installed at a customer site, and data is then updated every single time there's a change to the asset, like a new software update or a part that has been replaced by a refurbished one. All of these changes will affect asset performance. And if we're looking at assets with a lifetime of 20 years, that is a lot of changes to an original asset. So different from my dishwasher that just has a part that can be thrown out and replaced. Eventually, I'll just buy a new dishwasher. We're talking a completely different game. Asset data keeps track of all these changes that make that asset unique. And if you're working to deliver best reliability, uptime, extend asset lifetime, and even outcome as a service, then you need to have that deep knowledge of the asset. And that's really our vision at ServiceMax. And today we're introducing some new terminology around Asset 360. And Asset 360 really enables and is the core of our asset-centric field service management solution. We are here to help streamline the complexities of the service operation and deliver that complete 360-degree view and management of assets across the organization. It's both the ability to see that data and also the ability to manage it across your organization. And this asset-centric strategy really enables you to drive efficiencies in the process and grow your business by delivering that number one goal, which is maximum uptime to the customers that helps to keep the world running. Really, Asset 360 is the glue between the physical world of assets and the business world. It's that critical information and methodology and philosophy that service organizations need to deliver the outcomes that customers want today. So before I continue further with talking about this asset-centric view of the world, I wanted to bring one of our customers and really a visionary in asset centricity and driving outcomes through that focus. Mark, welcome to our webinar today.
Thank you, Stacy.
Why don't we start with you? Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about 3D Systems?
Okay, Mark Hessinger with 3D Systems, and 3D Systems is a company. We produce 3D printers, but that's what I'm involved with, supporting those 3D printers, but we also produce materials. We have on-demand manufacturing services. We have a whole healthcare division, so a lot of things related to 3D. And with the introduction of new materials over the last few years, the adaptation of 3D printing into manufacturing is becoming more and more prevalent. So that is what we're focused on as far as our service strategy, is making sure we can support customers using our printers in manufacturing environments.
Oh, wait, whoops, I went one slide too many. Okay, so you know, our interactions with you obviously started when you started looking at ServiceMax. What were some of the challenges that prompted you to look at ServiceMax?
So I started with 3D Systems a little over 3 years ago, and one of the challenges was the processes around managing service organization. So in service, as we know, we have people, we have parts, and we have processes. And the technology connects all that and helps guide us through that. And we needed to improve our processes, and we also needed transition, as I was saying, more and more manufacturing companies are using 3D printers. So years ago, it was just prototyping. The response time was not as critical. So it was really, how do we redesign the service organization to be able to support those types of customers and those types of environments? And we needed the proper tools and technology to support us along that path, and ServiceMax has helped us greatly in moving in that direction.
Awesome. That's great to hear. Tell us a little more. Now that you have that necessary data, tell us a little bit more about the success you've seen.
So I'll talk through the different points on the slide. With increasing service revenue, very important. We run service as a P&L, so we need to be driving the top line and improving the efficiencies. So historically, when a contract would come up for renewal, service manager would go out to renew. The customer would say, I want a better price, and they didn't have a lot of information at their fingertips to be able to really negotiate. Now we have really good data by asset, how much time we spent, what we did. We knew previously what parts we used, but now we have all the time information. So our service managers understand really what it takes to support that asset, what we're doing at the customer. And we've had good success stories of actually negotiating price increases 15 to 20%. That growth rate is the growth rate we had over the past year for our Americas, where we went first live with ServiceMax. We're now live globally since a year. But it's enabling the analytics and the data that Stacy talked to earlier. If you understand your business better, you can offer the value, understand the value you're providing to customers better. So that's been very helpful. On resource efficiency, one of the things we like to look at, we're a relatively small service organization, 240 employees supporting customers globally. So we look at what's the ratio of work time to travel time. And by now collecting the time data and looking at that, we did a lot of cross-training to get people in the right places, trained on the right technologies at the right levels. We're able to improve our efficiencies. Also, from the data we're collecting, working with supply chain and engineering to improve the quality of the product, we've been able to reduce the cost of servicing some of the products. So that's been good as well. Both of these first bullets then have resulted in us doubling the service margin in the last couple of years, and we're on a good track to continue to grow that further. And then, as was mentioned earlier, it used to be, you know, if I have your product, how quick will you be here if something goes wrong? Those conversations aren't happening. It's more of, I'm going to use this in my factory. I'm depending on a certain uptime. We want you to guarantee uptime. With tracking information from our work orders and the statuses, we can start seeing the uptime and manage the uptime. That helps us a lot with the data there. So knowing where the asset is, keeping track of all the information around the asset allows us to have that information and have those types of conversations now with customers that we couldn't have before.
Wow, that's really impressive stuff. As you look to the future, what are your goals?
On the customer side, I'll talk about one first. Is we did a lot on improving our NPS scores, so we feel we're at a strong level now. We tripled that. We're in the mid-60s. We want to hold it in that range, get close to 70. But by having loyal customers and having the information how to drive service, we should be able to continually improve our margins, and we're targeting getting to around 40% gross margin in the service business. And then while we're working on uptime and we're supporting that for specific customers and industries, I want to be able to really do that across the board. Any geography, any product can have confidence. And as all the pieces of the technology are coming together, it helps us support that and understand it. Another thing that we're leveraging, which you mentioned briefly before, Stacy, is the communication between people. So we have a lot of, I'd say, rogue communication strategies, people using social media. We've taken advantage of the offer from ServiceMax, try Zinc for 3 months. And we're doing that. We're starting to pilot this week. But I see that will allow us to capture more information, communicate better globally with our experts to resolve problems. So it's another building block in the technology to help us get to where we need to be.
That's great. Well, thank you. For those of you that don't know, Zinc is near and dear to me. I was the CEO of Zinc, which was acquired by ServiceMax, so it's part of how we are part of the same company. And those of you that didn't know about the offer that Mark just mentioned, we are offering Zinc for free to customers and prospects during this uncertain time in COVID-19. Communication has become more critical now than ever, and getting those technicians talking to each other and really getting them hotlines directly to experts, using broadcasts to get important information out to the field in mass is really important. So I'm happy to hear you guys are taking us up on that, and I sincerely hope that delivers some great results on top of all of the amazing stuff that you guys have already been doing. So thank you for that. And thank you very much. And I want to thank you for wearing a green shirt. I'm not sure if you planned that, but you matched very nicely into the ServiceMax blue and green colors. I think when Amit comes up, he matches too. So thank you very much, Mark, and thanks for all your comments. I want to remind everyone there is a little Q&A box at the bottom of the screen where you can type in questions. We've already got quite a few in there, but would love to hear from you. At the end, Mark, Amit, and I will all be answering questions that you guys submit. So thank you for submitting those. And, you know, from where Mark just left off talking about the future, let's all look at the future together. Gartner defines the future of field service management in a recent research report from December. And as we've been discussing, as the complexity of service delivery goes up on the left side, the need for asset or equipment, or as they call asset-centric, equipment-centric, really they're interchangeable. Some of you call them assets, some of you call them equipment. But as that complexity goes up, the need for those equipment or asset-centric strategies also goes up. And as business requirements and the world continues to evolve, more and more customers are demanding tailored service packages to meet that need. The most highly evolved organizations will be in a position to deliver what's in the very right box in this chart, which is outcome-centric business models. So let me try to define that. And actually, Harvard Business Review did a really good job defining it in a relatively recent article, where the title was rather blunt. Manufacturing companies need to sell outcomes, not products. Again, pretty blunt there, that this is all about what the customer gets from you and what outcomes they receive versus focusing on the product you're selling. So the example they use in the article, which is a great one, is suppose you own an airline and you've ordered an engine from Rolls-Royce or GE Aviation. What are you really looking for? Are you looking for a piece of machinery to meet a product need? Or are you looking for a powerful, safe, and reliable means to deliver air passengers to their destinations? And I mean, I think we all know it's a pretty rhetorical question, but this question has been top of mind lately among manufacturers that are trying to drive profitable growth. And it's triggered a fundamental shift to the way business operates that increasingly focuses on outcomes. Technology advances and the industrial Internet of Things are making this outcome orientation more feasible every day. For example, when GE provides a, quote, power by the hour, and when people say, what does outcome-centric mean, that's always my answer is, think of power by the hour. I'm selling power by the hour as their engine solution. They're delivering an outcome, and potentially what they're giving is more value to the customer. And they're likely generating more return for themselves as well. But I will state that it is impossible to have that outcome-centric business model if you don't have the 360-degree view of your assets. It is a building block to achieve that outcome-centric goal. So in order to do that, it's not just the service organization that looks at and benefits from asset data. Throughout the life cycle of an asset, different people interact with it and have a stake at it. Again, I'm going to quote HBR in the same article. Becoming an outcome-centric organization isn't as straightforward as it might seem. The transformation requires manufacturers to redesign every major function in its organization, especially commercial functions charged with defining, selling, and servicing value propositions. After-sales support and customer service are also affected as they increasingly focus on predictive interventions. To deliver outcomes, customer service teams must be tightly integrated with the commercial organization so they can anticipate customer issues and proactively offer solutions. Presently, these functions tend to be siloed from the upstream marketing and sales organizations. This will have to change for many companies seeking to become outcome-centric. So we actually already got a Q&A question in here about, how does asset centricity and asset 360 fit into customer 360? And I would argue that for asset-centric organizations and manufacturers like we've defined, asset 360 is a core component to customer 360. To have a full understanding of your customer so that you can deliver that uptime or that outcome to them, you've got to have a handle on your assets and have a 360-degree view of and management of assets for every department in the organization in order to achieve that next level, which is outcome-centric or that digital transformation to deliver the customer what they need. And Mark talked about his results, but we also did a study with Vanson and Bourne on the return of money spent on gathering and understanding asset service data. It doesn't have to be a costly proposition or even a hard proposition. The analysis showed that the average ROI for respondents, and respondents were IT and field service professionals, that they expect, the return they expect on every dollar spent, ensuring they can automatically collect, aggregate, and analyze asset service data is more than a 4x return. And how are they doing that? Through the greater understanding of every single asset so we can get longer through life. So to understand your assets and truly understand how customers are using those assets, you really need to invest in Asset 360. Now, how do we do that? How do we deliver Asset 360? Our contribution to the asset record includes the as-maintained bill of materials, service contracts, service history, and more. It informs every process in the overall ServiceMax solution, which I'm showing here. Now, I already spent a long time on one slide. I'm not going to spend a long time on this whole slide. This was not a product pitch. But certainly if you're interested in learning more about ServiceMax, we're happy to have direct conversations with you. But I think you can see the whole solution is built around that asset record. And every capability that we develop is with the focus of an asset-centric field service management solution. And so now I'm going to turn it over to Amit, who is our Senior Vice President of Product, and he's going to take us a little bit deeper into the product. Amit, hello.
Hi, Stacey. Thanks for the intro, and thanks for putting up the picture of me looking like a magician doing a magic trick on stage. Appreciate it. And also just wanted to give a big thank you to Mark. It's always very inspiring for me to talk about product roadmap items after hearing real-life stories from a partner who's adopting technologies, and not just adopting the new technologies, but also benefiting from them as well. So thanks again, Mark. What I wanted to do right now is take a few minutes to highlight some of the items on our product roadmap, things that we've just recently introduced in our recent releases, but also things coming in the near term that build on a lot of the aspects that Stacey and Mark talked about in relation to asset-centric field service. And the first thing I wanted to start with is just when we talk about our product at ServiceMax, we really serve the service life cycle of the assets that are installed in the field, right? And often that life cycle begins with installation of equipment. And installations or similar type of project work are often difficult to plan or schedule because they're a makeup of several tasks that have dependencies on them, whether it's the sequence by which the task needs to be executed or the type of skills required for each type of task. And so we've introduced recently a unique solution in our scheduling solution, the service board, that actually automates the import of these projects from tools such as Microsoft Project. So you can actually plan these type of work, these installations, in the same place that you're already looking at your planned maintenance, as well as when your break fix or unplanned work comes in. And what's really interesting about it is that not only have we had it in a way where you can see all these pieces of work in one place, so you can plan more effectively, but we also added some intelligence in there so that we can actually propose schedules based on optimized constraints to help that planner be more confident when actually assigning that work. And this is really interesting because considering the times in COVID, as we've been talking to customers and partners and so forth, we know the types of work that have been delayed because of shelter in place and so forth have been work like installation. You can't go into buildings anymore to actually install new pieces of equipment and so forth. So as we're game planning for when this pent-up demand for installation work comes up, and whether it's 6 months from now, 9 months from now, or whatnot, this work needs to be executed. A tool that would not only just help you schedule those installations, but also provide some intelligence to schedule a large number of installations along with the other planned work. We're seeing with customers to make sure that this is something that can help them in that scenario. But we talked about installations, but when the equipment is already installed, obviously there's maintenance that needs to be done throughout the life cycle of the equipment. And this is where the technicians typically come in as work needs to be done. And the way that we at ServiceMax enable technicians for an asset-centric world, it really starts with what Stacey mentioned around that as-maintained bill of material and giving that visibility into the asset record to the technician, whether he or she is at home or on their mobile device next to the equipment. And when we talk about visibility, visibility is a layered term. And what I mean by that is, our applications, we provide a visual view of the actual component hierarchy of the field replaceable units or serialized parts of the asset. We also allow you to look at the technical attributes associated with the asset, the configuration data, the software version, the counters associated, including the service history. And this is the type of visibility that you need someone who's performing work on a complex piece of equipment to do your job accurately and, again, confidently. Now, what we've introduced in the product more recently was trying to, again, help assist that technician in completing that work. And so we've introduced something called service flow automation, which actually takes that context of the technician who's in the field based on their location, based on where they're at in their work order, and try to automate some items that typically would take 6 or 7 taps to get through, and surface that via a push notification or an SMS message that the technician can act on. The idea here is that we want to set up the flow in such a way that if we can identify repetitive tasks that a technician is doing, can we automate those repetitive tasks so that the technician can focus on the more complex items that he or she is doing to actually complete that work, right? Secondly, we talked about the idea of assets being complex. And so when we talk about complex, we can say, hey, there's a lot of different components and a large bill of materials. But sometimes the asset is just physically huge to look at, and you need a visual representation of it beyond just the component hierarchy. So we actually introduced an extensibility called a mobile activity space that lets us actually put in a custom UI where our technician or user can actually touch a piece that UI or tap on that picture and invoke that workflow in an offline fashion, leveraging everything that we have in our ServiceMax application, our 3rd generation sync engine, our workflow engine, and so forth. But instead of interacting in a very textual manner, you can actually select the wheel on the tractor or select the actual component on the UI. Again, with the goal of having that technician execute that work in a more accurate manner than what he or she has done previously. And lastly, when we think about this experience of an asset-centric world, it's how do we enable that same experience that I talked about, whether you're on a phone device, on a tablet, on a laptop, across different operating systems. And while as a manufacturer and OEM, you can maybe control what the devices that someone will use within your own workforce, as we see it's almost non-negotiable now to have a blended workforce to complete work. You're going to rely on contractors or partners to do that, for whom you don't really have control over what kind of devices they use. So for us at ServiceMax, it's important that the experience of completing this work and the execution of the work on complex assets is pervasive throughout all types of devices. And in fact, in the next few months, we'll be releasing an updated Windows application that is that's aligned with the new user experience we've introduced in our mobile apps, and also has that automation I was speaking of as well, again, to standardize the way that this work is executed. One other item that has come up in relation to work execution that's particularly sensitive from COVID is that how do we better support remote service and support, right? And it's top of mind now because physically technician can't get 2 pieces of equipment anymore. So now everyone's scrambling, trying to figure out how can we actually provide that sort of support or maintenance without physically going to the machine. And so there's a couple of ways that we've been supporting, and we'll continue to support that. And one is a remote triage module that we've co-developed with our partner Aquant. And of course, not surprisingly, Mark from 3D Systems has been one of our early adopters and pilot customers of it. And this is where we actually analyze the work order history on assets so that when a service request comes in and something's wrong with the asset, not only can we surface what are the probability of certain parts that are needed to improve our first-time fix rate, but what are also some remote solutions that can be tried before we actually roll the truck. And the important part here is that is identifying the fact that the remote solution may not be the highest probabilistic solution, but it could be the fastest one to try. So again, this is one of the options that we want to surface to better create that experience we want in terms of how we support the maintenance of machines remotely. Secondly, both Stacy and Mark talked about Zinc and how remote communication is more important than ever. And it's not so much about remote chat or collaboration, but from our perspective and what our customers are finding value in Zinc is the idea of how do we assist a technician or even a customer who's operating the equipment to find an expert who can help assist them in their own triage of what's happening. And I think this is a trend we're going to continue to see, is that beyond just the technicians actually trying to find other subject matter experts to help them, can the customers or the people operating the equipment leverage this ability to find experts to help them also self-triage the issues they're seeing. So then, moving on to the next theme, we can't talk about asset centricity without compliance. And for us at ServiceMax, we're trying to build ways in the product to help OEMs and manufacturers maintain compliance through better asset traceability. And Stacey mentioned in her Asset 360 slide where we had different personas around in that asset-centric world, and one included folks in the supply chain and quality assurance who often need to work with their service department to solve production errors and introduce product modifications for assets in the field. And to that end, we're in the middle of introducing the field change order module to address this need, and we call it FCOs because field change orders is a mouthful. And FCOs are mainly initiated to solve those production errors and to introduce product modifications in a collective manner. This might involve replacing parts, doing a software upgrade, resetting some configurations. In the case of production errors, the costs are usually at the service organization's expense. So adding that FCO along with a break fix or already planned maintenance activity will help reduce the service cost. And so we're seeing this with our customers like those in the medical device manufacturing field, where they require that complete traceability of their assets, such as which lot or batch the parts came from, the tools that were used to calibrate, so that if that quality team is collaborating with the service department for a recall, it can easily be traced back to generate that precise list of assets to take action on. So just something to keep an eye out for in our upcoming release. And then finally, one item I want to talk about was along this theme of enabling more personas with an asset-centric experience. We're trying to differentiate the customer experience. And what we mean by that is for that persona who's actually operating the equipment, the customer, we're looking to build a targeted mobile experience to help that customer have better asset visibility. And when we talk about asset visibility, it's about being able to look at what your assets are that are under contract and warranty, obviously be able to create a service request if an issue happens and so forth. But it comes back to our overarching theme from ServiceMax product perspective, and that is that from an OEM or manufacturer perspective, most of our customers and partners, they don't have great visibility into their install base because their install products get distributed and through channels that are out of their visibility. So today they've relied on technicians sometimes doing a site survey while they're already doing work to make sure their install base is up to date. Now we want to move forward and say, well, beyond the text, can we actually give an experience to the end customer where they can view that equipment and also make the modifications themselves? And they may be incentivized to do so because they want to make sure the warranty information is accurate and so forth. So we see a lot of potential with this in providing an out-of-the-box experience that's branded, that would show well, again, for the brand of the manufacturer and OEM. And I foreshadowed this earlier on the Zinc slide. We see an opportunity for this to be a platform to help the customer potentially do remote triage or get knowledge on the asset itself, potentially via Zinc and through other knowledge mechanisms as well. So, I said a lot there and went through a few items related to Asset 360, and I think the takeaway is around asset visibility and also the personas who are actually involved to realize this nirvana of an outcomes-based service model. It's beyond just scheduling and technicians, where the schedulers and technicians are important and no doubt. But as we talked about the customers, we talked about the quality assurance and working with manufacturing. That's really what we're talking about with the Asset 360 ecosystem. And with that, Stacey, I think I'm done with my piece.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. So, Kristen, I think we're going to take some questions.
Yeah, we'll switch it over to questions. So feel free to keep writing in questions. We already have a good amount, so we'll go ahead and get started. Let's see, we've got one. What are the challenges in implementing Zinc for a prospect?
Well, there aren't many, I will tell you that. Those of you that are used to a big, long, 12-month-long ERP implementation are in for a treat if you want to implement Zinc. We have customers with thousands of technicians that have gone live with Zinc in a couple of days. It's really meant to be very usable for a highly mobile technician in the field with very little training. So we built Zinc to be able to be used with very, very little training, very little setup. There is, I mean, you want to put some thought behind how you group your teams and how you set up hotlines and who you give administrative rights to. It's a highly secure solution, which is obviously not true for things like WhatsApp, which is one of the benefits to Zinc is that you can control it, you can control teams, hotline groups. So there is some thought that goes into setting it up, and we certainly can work with you to help you on that. But I mean, your teams could be live by the end of this week, seriously. So I think I saw another question on how do we find out more about the Zinc offer. A couple of ways. We do have a whole new section of our website that we've created in this time of COVID to talk about some resources, some virtual events, and you can find it there. I think, Kristen, we're going to show it here in a moment on the screen. But also you can just go to servicemax.com and go to the contact us form. It's just it's kind of name, address, email address, and just tell us you're interested in the Zinc offer, and that will get to someone who can help get you going quickly. And the same is true on anything. If you want a detailed demo of ServiceMax or you want to engage on any of these topics, just fill out that contact us form and it will get you to the right person in the quickest way possible.
Yes, and we can go ahead. We always send a thank you email that will have the link to the recording, and we can also include resources like that Zinc offer that we're giving. Look out for that. We've got lots of questions. Thanks, everyone. So here's one. I think I'll turn this over to Mark. Someone said, we want to move more in the direction that you've talked about here, but we're having trouble with a business case. How do we establish one?
Okay, for a business case, there are lots of variables. You could say you're going to grow revenue, you're going to save costs, save people, but I like to get to things that are measurable, easy to see. So your key stakeholders, whoever you're reporting to, and CFO, right? They want to see your ROI and payback. So I'll give 3 short examples of how to present that. For field, you have the value add activities and the non-value add. The non-value add, I'm saying, is administrative work and travel. On administrative work, when we started the project, we assumed after talking to service managers, we'd save about 50% of the time. The techs in the field that now have iPads and are efficient tell me they actually save like 75% of the time. So if you take, how many hours a week are you doing administrative work? We had in our team was about 4. You take 50%, that's 2. Now you can say, I'm going to save that on overtime, or I'm going to turn that into revenue, and you multiply that out by the number of weeks and the number of people. All right, so you're doing simple math, but things that you can then demonstrate later on that you can actually measure. On travel, so you may not have a system like we did to show you how much travel, but you can estimate, you can survey your people, what percentage of time, and the same sort of analysis. If you can take a certain percentage of time, take it away from travel and put it into revenue generating, that adds value. And another example is leakage. Without a good system to manage contract entitlements, our managers knew we were giving away some parts that shouldn't be covered in the contract. So you will gain some value by not giving away things that the customer is really not entitled to. Simple math for that, how many parts do you use under contracts in a month? If it's 1 million parts, then you have to make some kind of estimate. If it's 2%, $20,000 in parts, it's probably a 50% margin, so you give away $40,000 in parts. And you scale that with the number of how much inventory you consume and what percentage you think is leakage. And that's a few quick examples, but build cases like that that people will look at and say, yes, I can see you're going to add value, and I can understand where you're going to get it, and you can measure it.
Awesome. Thank you. All righty, let's keep going. We've got one. I think, Amit, you can help with this one. Do we have any pre-built connectors to third-party ERP or asset management platforms like SAP, Oracle, to keep data in sync?
Yeah, it's a great question. So what we do have right now is our services organization offers accelerators, and particularly for SAP, where I believe the term is it's a cookbook, if you will, where it's the accelerator way to get to establish how to connect ServiceMax master data into a system like SAP. And the way that we've seen our customers use it is that it either works pretty well for your use case if it's well aligned, but if not, it actually provides you the right base to understand, what are the core pieces of master data, whether it's install product object in ServiceMax, our work order, and so forth, and how that blends into SAP. And that's how we start the engagement to help our customers understand how to keep those two databases in sync.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Might help with this one too. We've got an oil and gas specific one. So it says, on the oil and gas business, heavy equipment, valves, pumps, etc., the utilization and productivity is always an issue. I would like to hear from you guys on this topic. How do you keep utilization up to make sure field service is a profit stream and not just a necessary evil? Yeah, no, it's a fantastic question, and one that we talked a lot about with our customers. And so, one, I think to echo what Mark was saying, if your business is driven or measured by service contracts or warranties and upsell opportunities and whatnot, then I think it's important to surface that in the software and enable your folks in your organization to show that field service is the technicians are very customer facing, right? You're on someone else's site performing work, and showing how doing that work and not getting services away from free is helping the top line. So I think there's that revenue element to it, and also just bringing the fact that the service business is not in the back office, but actually on the front line with the customers and represents the brand is a huge part of it. Now, coming back to the productivity piece, from our experience, it really comes back to those items I was talking about from technician execution. And what I mean by that is a lot of the work, and especially in oil and gas, there's a lot of repetitive tasks that need to be done, a lot of data collection and so forth that tends to be very monotonous and so forth. That's part of the complex work. So our approach to that is trying to really enable the folks to do as little repetitive work as possible by having the apps be smart enough to do that on an automatic fashion. So that's at least a better experience to actually perform that work, and then the personas and the technicians are focused on just getting the job done, and therefore are more motivated to keep adopting the tools, and so that the service managers have visibility into the work that's completed. Fantastic. Okay, since you're on such a roll, I'll give you one more. How do you get access to as-maintained bill of materials components? Where is that information stored? Yeah, it's a great question. So typically what will happen is that if the starting point for the as-maintained BOM usually comes from an ERP or the master for where the asset was manufactured and shipped. Now, based on your type of asset, we don't import the full bill of materials, like the consumable parts. We, in ServiceMax, as best practice, trade and maintain only the field replaceable units or the serialized portion, right? So it's typically a subset of the BOM that's coming from the manufacturing source. And then realistically, depending if you're a service provider or you're servicing equipment that was not manufactured by you, a lot of the as-maintained BOM in terms of the current status of it or certain components actually get added in directly by technicians during service when they're on site as well. So there's this initial import and what's grown, and then as the asset's being maintained over the life cycle, we actually see as the work is being done, that as-maintained BOM is being updated every time that asset is touched. Awesome. Thank you. All righty, we'll keep plugging along. We've got one. How do you define what available time is for a field service organization, meaning time they can spend on billable activities? I think Mark might have a great answer for this one.
So the way we do it, you define billable time. It's different by country because the work hours are different, but you start with total hours that you work in a year, subtract away holidays, vacation, and that you have the total number of hours, and then what do you think your utilization should be? We target currently 80% utilization. So that gives around 1,500 hours a year that we should be charging. Well, those are the hours we want to use. That is split typically between the travel, the work, and the administrative stuff. So that's why we try to minimize the amount of time that's on travel and administrative. But that's how we get to what is the available hours to spend.
Okay. And for Mark, I'll give you this one. What is the asset import process? We have over 10,000 assets we currently manage.
Okay, that's quite easy. ServiceMax sits inside Salesforce, so the import capabilities are very simple. If you have your assets in an Excel sheet, you can upload them. That'll be done quite quickly. And that reminds me also, related to the question earlier on justification to invest in such a tool, I find it's also easier to convince your IT team who wants to make sure that the security is right and the architecture right. ServiceMax has a stamp of approval from Salesforce, and that carries a lot of weight with the IT teams.
Fabulous. Okay, I think we have time for just a couple more questions. I have one. What is the lowest cost threshold this program is suggested for, or is this based on the expected useful lifetime? Does that make sense? Anyone?
I'm not. Can you repeat that one more time, Kristen?
What is the lowest cost threshold?
Yeah,
I'm thinking for ServiceMax. Is that what
the way I would understand that question is what's the size company that can start using ServiceMax as a tool?
Oh, I think it's a good question. I'm trying to figure out how to qualify that. I think typically we look for the size of the organization is different from the size of the field service organization. So typically the customers we have at least 50 technicians out there where you can start getting advantages of scale by deploying the software. Now that 50 technician threshold may be part of a large organization or a smaller organization, which is why I hesitated. But that's usually one metric that we would start with in terms of how we would qualify whether you're a good fit for ServiceMax tool or not.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. All right, so we have one about Zinc. Can Zinc connect with Microsoft Teams?
Oh. And I'm sorry, that was for me. Can Zinc connect with Microsoft Teams? We can follow up offline with that in terms of how to connect. And what I mean by that is there's just overlapping capabilities in terms of the communication between Microsoft Teams and what we do in terms of collaborating with individuals. Now, where Zinc would be able to come in potentially is the hotlines and connecting folks with experts and broadcasts and so forth. So those are probably more the differentiating tools that you would look at in introducing Zinc versus Teams. So that could be something we can, with the individual ask that question, we can dive deeper into that.
Okay, great. I'll take one more.
I was on mute trying to answer that. Thanks for that. Maybe one more, Kristen?
Yeah, I think we've got just enough time. So we've got, as a 3PS, how do you compete against other more integrated solutions like ERP or CRM with service modules?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. We certainly consider ourselves a very broad and deep field service management platform in and of itself, although we also could be called best of breed as a solution specifically for asset interest-centric organizations. That said, Amit talked earlier about the importance of sharing information and integrating to an ERP, which we literally do for every single customer. So I think that the integration of information as it relates to inventory and the other components of an ERP are there. As it relates to CRM, if you go back to our architecture slide, I mean, we are built native on the Force.com platform. So, I mean, it's virtually like we are a CRM with service modules included. It is natively built technology. It's not just point integration. So the capabilities of ServiceMax plus Service Cloud, and even as I talked about, it's important, the customer 360 is important for everyone. So having that not just integration, but build on foundation of CRM, I think makes us highly competitive with any CRM that also is offering service modules.
Yeah, and as a former user of SAP Service Module, for the users, it's so much easier to adapt to a system like ServiceMax than to an ERP system.
Thank you. Agreed. Thinking about that end user is really important in our world, and a lot of the ERP companies haven't really built that muscle yet. They've mostly focused on back office users.
All righty. Well, thank you everyone for joining. We had a lot of great questions.